All right, and here we go with episode 38, if my memory serves right. Yeah, episode 38 of 84 Feet with Cady and Cap. This part is with none other than my good friend Jeff Mlinar from Empire State Takeover. This is our first time recording in 2025, as it is January 2nd. So, just a happy new year, Jeff. And we last time we recorded it was I believe it was the week before Christmas week. So how you been? Obviously your travels are well established, especially during the that weekend right after Christmas. But how you been, and how were your holidays?
Um, as always, a pleasure to see you. A pleasure being back. New year, same 84 feet. Um, Doing all right. I'm back to rested. I feel like those like the holiday break, tournament week, and like the big AAU weekends. I don't do them as well in my 30s as I did in my 20s. I used to be able to just kind of go through a hell week and be fine on the other side, and then doing 5 days of 30 games or whatever it might be with all the travel. By the time I get to it, I'm looking forward to that day or two off. So back rested, ready to love that. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year, the holiday break week. Just days full of basketball. Usually a lot of high level basketball, a lot of matchups that you don't necessarily get to see in any other fashion. So I always look forward to it. And now that we're through it, looking forward to getting back to the grind of the schedule with league play and local matchups and all that good stuff. And holidays were great.
Absolutely. And something else that happened over the last few weeks that we something that you had been an idea that was birthing, and now it's officially come come out and is for public consumption. I know you had discussed, but now you've officially pulled the trigger on putting together your own rankings, in which they are not necessarily going to cover every single place. Like Long Island is it not a regular pit stop for you, so it's not really going to be including much for the folks down there on the LI. But all in all, it's going to be basically, from what I understand, you can correct me on this, roughly like a top 15, top 20 from each classification from within the area that you traditionally cover in your travels. That sound correct?
Yes. A short. I'll keep this short. Little backstory. I have in the past helped out with the state rankings that we have all known and grown familiar with. I have helped out with those, dating back probably about 7 or 8 years ago. I'd helped out with those for a couple of years, didn't for another 2 or 3 years. And then when somebody else kind of took charge, then I went back to helping out with them a little bit. Same thing with all state teams, kind of for the most part, generally an unofficial role. But whenever I was helping out with the state ranking stuff, I was also helping out with all state. But yeah, long story short, those that followed the game last year, it is what it is. We did not have all state team. The girls did not have all state teams. I heard it. My computer is moving because one of our cats has decided to get right behind it. So if you're enjoying the YouTube version of this and you see a little bit of jiggling around, that's we have a cat. His name is Wade. My girlfriend named him Wade Wilson from the what is that? I'm not a movie guy. Deadpool, whatever. He is a big 20-pounder, and he is now wanting to take a drink out of my coffee. So, going back to things like the state rankings. So with the all-state teams last year, we had, anybody that followed last year, we know, I had heard it. I probably got. I'm not trying to pass judgment on anyone. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. I'm not trying to, that's not what this is about. But realistically, I probably had 75 times in my DMs about, do you know anything about all-state teams? When are all-state teams coming out? When are, the boys had them. What about the girls? And I get it all. I heard it all. And it was the sort of thing that I didn't think would anger me, because even though I'm doing state rankings, and just for the podcast to know, I do plan on doing all upstate teams after the season as well. But it's something that even when I did it, it was always kind of like, take it with a grain of salt. There's a lot of variables at play. Don't take these sorts of numbers verbatim. But I didn't think it would annoy me. But then as we got to like mid-late summer, like, well, that is something that the boys got that the girls didn't get. I am annoyed by it. And so from this idea kind of birthed from that, like, I always said I wasn't going to get into this, even though I felt like I could. All right, I guess I'm going to get into it. And even this year, I dragged my feet on it a little bit. Whether that was just I was too bogged down with other things, or subconsciously, like getting second thoughts. But even when boys state rankings came out and girls lagged a little bit, and you're immediately seeing the stuff on social media about, hey, one of the girls is going to get it, and like, all right, I really got to jump on this and do it. So there's your little backstory. I have a little bit of experience kind of doing something like this, and now I'm going to try and break in and do my own thing. So I am just doing what I call the Upstate 20, which will be a top 20 for each class, generally a weekly basis through about the back end of sectional playoffs. Probably March, I won't update them, but should be approximately once a week through end of February, beginning of March. Top 20, each of the 6 classes. I'm using a loose interpretation of upstate. Everything north of New York City. Like I'm the geographical region in which I'm using for upstate 20 is what someone from the Bronx or Manhattan would call upstate, not what we would call upstate. So, and it's nothing against Long Island. It's nothing against New York City. The reason that I'm not, because I considered doing like a legit state ranking, when this idea was birthed last summer, and I spoke with people on Long Island and all that, but there's nothing against them. It's just that I don't get there enough. I don't want to include areas in this that I am not confident with my own eyes. Sections, all of the New York State Public High School Athletic Association sections, except for 8 and 11, I am comfortable with those 9 sections, and then any other school that is not part of the association that lies within those. So it's the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, and then on top of that, with the girls, we have a few CHSAA schools, which are more prominently known as the New York City Catholics. But Buffalo splits public-private, and your private schools in Buffalo play in Monsignor Martin Association, which is CHSAA, so I include them. Kennedy Catholic, who came up here to participate in the Holy Names tournament, had a couple of competitive wins against Niski and Albany. They are also part of CHSAA, so they're included. Any school that's CHSAA, I'm including in class AAA. There's a couple of reasons for it. We don't have that much AAA representation. That's for the region that I cover. AAA is the lightest represented, as far as just sheer amount of schools. Mm-hmm. So that kind of balances the pack a little bit. And then what's interesting out in Buffalo is you don't know what class those schools are going to represent in state playoffs until after they get through league playoffs. It's the Monsignor Martin kind of league setup where you have your league playoffs. Whoever wins the league playoffs, they play in the top playoff class for CHSAA. They basically have a consolation, like a double elimination kind of consolation setup, where whoever makes it out of that side represents the second class, and then they have their own, kind of lower end division playoffs for a third class. So because of that, because the majority of the CHSAA schools I cover, you don't know what class they're going to be in until the beginning of March. They're all in AAA. So with the state rankings, again, weekly, generally speaking, I'm not doing it, and I'm just saying this because this is paid content. I've toiled with maybe letting it be a free read, but I'm not having, so and so with just a bland avatar as their Twitter profile picture with 3 followers ragging on me over some team that's number 17 that should be number 13. I'm not doing it. You want to yell at me, you got to pay me for it, I guess. But so it is subscriber content. So subscriber content on my website is a low cost, relatively speaking. It's $6.99 a month. You can cancel anytime, or if you want to do the annual subscription, I do my AAU coverage and all that sort of stuff. It's $49.99 a year. It's also where I dump all of my pictures that I don't post on the socials. So shameless plug there. But these rankings, they're not just like here's a list of schools, that's it. It's a list of the 20. I have class notes from from each class, just various things that caught my eye for whatever reason. A list of games of note over the previous week of what the results were, and then a list of games of note for the upcoming week. Ones to circle that have that have some semblance of importance within their class. So yeah, put those out right around Christmas time for the first time for all 6 classes. I'm working on the next set now. That was meant to be a pre-holiday break week, and now I'll have a post-holiday break, which they might get done, Thursday night, out Friday morning. But yeah, turn the page, started doing that, and looking forward to seeing how it goes. The website stuff, when I started doing it a few years ago, made me start to hone in some other things, whether it was just writing ability or being disciplined with my schedule, and looking at the game in a different light. And maybe this will do the same. I hope will continue to grow and enhance the discussion of women's basketball in upstate New York, and maybe it'll help me grow as well as far as my coverage and how I see the game.
And what I'll do is for everybody out there who might be interested, regardless of whether you're in the Spotify audio only version of this or the YouTube, there will be a link in the description to Jeff's website. That way you can navigate it and subscribe and get your access to the Upstate 20 and check it out every time Jeff updates it. So we'll take care of that as well.
And if you're on YouTube, since he continues to hop around, here's the cat.
Hola. Hola, Puss in
He
Boots.
just did it again. So apparently he wants attention.
Well, hello to Puss in Boots over there. All right, before we jump into the Christmas time basketball, there were 3 games the week before Christmas that you went to locally that I wanted to address real quick. First off, the night of the day that we last recorded, which was December 18th, there was a Class A matchup between Shalmont and Holy Names. AHN walked away with a 9-point win. Maggie Vollmer led the way with 23. Ariana Brandon had 19 to lead the way for Shalma in the loss. All in all, looked like a real nip and tuck game. You were there firsthand. It sounds like it was real nip and tuck until Shalman, unfortunately, got a little bit lost their mojo a little bit in that fourth quarter, and that allowed AHN to walk away with the victory. What were your general thoughts walking away from that yourself?
That was like 40 games ago.
I know.
I gotta turn it back a little bit. So my biggest, which I guess is probably a good thing because it's been a couple weeks and it's been a lot of games. What still sticks out to me from that? So the biggest thing that I'll take away from that, because it's just what pops in my head first, was I think that the term, I get that the basketball is a team game, but when I hear team win, a lot, I think that term's overused. Big team win, so everybody says it all the time. But when you talk when you talk team win, when you say team win, that Holy Name's win in that game was really kind of what I think of as far as team win. And I think in my rating, I had used the whole like chop wood, carry water phrasing and mentality around it. But it felt like a win that everybody kind of carried their weight. Everybody had maybe their moments in certain parts of the game, and they needed all of them. If one of the links was weak and broke the chain, Shalmont was there. I think it was a 59-50 was a 9-point game. They were there, so that could have been, that could have been theirs for the taking. They were in it until the closing possession. Holy Name started trying to, the way that they will, and for understandable reasons, try to establish the post with Maggie Vollmer. They go with a starting unit that is upperclassmen heavy. Maybe, more steady, more reliable. I don't know if reliable is the right term, but like kind of a steady, what you're going to get out of this group. And they've got some young guards that come in off the bench that are a little, they're young, but I think how that team works is they give them a boost offensively, and you hope that they're able to not lose that defensively. So they started solid, but offense was a little bit stagnant. They come in off the bench, and Lizzie Blanche, in particular, when she stepped in, gave them some meaningful production. Julia Viglucci came in, had a couple shots for him, hit one to hit a corner jumper, and then hit one to beat the first half buzzer. So Blanche is a freshman, Viglucci is a sophomore. So those two came. What I liked about that, those two came in, gave them a boost offensively, but that was, what you worry about is losing stuff on the defensive end compared to just kind of the older, stronger, more balanced athletes that they have in that senior class. But they gave them something offensively without really losing anything on the defensive end. Came in the second half, and Morgan Brewer hit a couple shots. Bellinger hit. I think she hit a corner jumper. Gianna Savoca didn't really score much, but she was just kind of steady, solid for him, right the ship in the second half. And they closed out with Maggie again. They got away from, at one point, Giggs called a timeout, maybe three-ish minutes left, because Shalmont went zone and it started to have its desired effect. And, Holy Names was kind of like jacking not in rhythm threes with a fourth quarter lead. And at one point, he called a timeout just to try and recenter him offensively, and it came out and closed it out with Maggie. Chalmont hung around. They've got the relatively potent guard play, which if Ariana and Brandon and the Cirillas are all kind of cooking at the same time, that can spell trouble for whoever. And they got enough to just stay in the hunt. They were never out of the game, but it was a solid overall kind of everyone held their weight win for Holy Names.
Then you went from that to a game that, for all intents and purposes, from everything I read, everything I saw, could have gone down as maybe an early game of the year candidate for you, because you end up going to Colony, and Ella Tremarchi drops in 22, Liv Hoffman drops in 21, gets a 65-60 victory at home against Shen. Game in which Gianna Soden dropped in 17 to lead Shen, and Gianna Winter also had 15 herself. Again, another one of those, real tight games, real hard-nosed games, and County was able to defend the home floor and walk with the 5-point win. But from the sounds of it and from everything that you had been discussing a couple times with me, really, really, really good representation of exactly what we've been talking about. That Suburban Council just gonna be punching and kicking and screaming all the way to the end, basically.
Yeah, that was really, it was kind of anyone's game. Felt a little bit more like a Liberty League college game at times, with the style of play, execution, shot making. First half, they kind of grinded it out a little bit. I think early on was more of, even though they know each other very well, but it was kind of like a feeling out sort of process. It was a rare Thursday night Suburban Council game. So with that being the case, it was the main show in town. It wasn't like it was a packed house, but the crowd was better. So, there was that sort of an element too. There was a little bit more buzz in the gym. So part of it, I think early on it was kind of the feeling out process. Second quarter, was it second quarter Shen play? Now I'm trying to think backwards. I think it was the second quarter. Shen came out strong, gave Colony some issues. Third quarter, Colony came out, made their big run. By late in the third quarter, Shen was down 8 until Gianna Soden said, "No, we're not down 8 anymore." Hit back-to-back threes over a 45-second stretch to give them a 1-point lead and kind of close to the finish. It was, that was one that just the entirety of that game, there's a lot that I could say about it, but it all boils down to it's just a high-level game. Especially, they felt each other out early, and then it turned into just as far as high school basketball is considered, just a display of execution and shot making. I would say that the teams probably combined to shoot somewhere between 50 and 60% in the second half. The second half scoring must have been somewhere in like the 40 to 35 sort of range. So, and it was crisp, it was clean. It wasn't a hack fest. It was the sort of game that if somebody isn't a fan, or somebody's not into women's basketball or into girls basketball, I would have tried to bring them to. I would have wanted them to see that game as their first game. That's the one that can sort of play like that, can kind of be the hook. It was just a fun game to watch. Two good teams getting after it. Again, the shot making. different players, the different players stepping up, but it was it was your usual suspects. It wasn't like there was somebody that came out of the blue and had the game of their life. It was just big dogs being big dogs. And yeah, that's what you want. All of that. I think that was the takeaway from everybody I spoke with that was at that game or played in that game. That's what you want.
And that was, I'd say that was probably also the same sentiment you got out of that Sunday before Christmas. Just randomly placed heavyweight matchup between Class A and Class AA. Columbia visited Albany Academy. A game in which I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I think Columbia was like 24 of 25, 25 of 26, something like that from the foul line. And that was in the end the tipping point for the for the Devils as they end up beating Albany Academy 65-58 at Academy. Actually on the Academy, the old boys floor, if that makes sense. Because I don't know what was going on with the girls' gym across the street, but for whatever reason they decided to play this one in a bigger gym with some slightly more capacity for fans in the old boys gym. And again, a game where a lot of back and forth, and oh me, oh my, are we seeing, and this is kind of jumping ahead of ourselves to what Columbia eventually did the rest of the holiday break. Are we seeing that C word out of Columbia this year? Like, I don't want to jump the gun, but are we seeing that 11-letter C word consistency?
28 for 29.
20 for 29. Thank you. I appreciate
and the
that.
one, and I won't out the person that missed the free throw, but the one free throw that was missed was the first one attempted.
Wow.
So they made their last 28.
That's wild.
I've seen, I've seen perfect performances on lower numbers. I've seen 14 for 14. I've seen, like 35 for 39. I've seen 22 for 24. Like the 28 for 29, and with it being 28 straight in a close win on the road. And it also wasn't, and I think that this matters too, it also wasn't like Academy was playing the foul game to try and extend, and they just got to the free throw line 12 times in the last 2 minutes, and they were allowed to get into some, they're allowed to get in some sort of like a free throw shooting rhythm. We're going to get the stop. We're going to get a rebound. They're going to follow us. We're going to go to the line, and you already have that in your head. I think they fouled, Liv Landy maybe hit 2 free throws with 2 seconds left or something like that. And that was the only foul to extend the game. All of the other ones were in the flow of the game. That I've never seen anything like it. That there's certain just performances, whether it's individual or team, over the years that stick in my head. That I'll never forget. I'll never forget Leah Middleton from Auburn putting up 48 on CNS at OCC in a sectional semifinal game, and they lost in overtime. But like the sort of performance that kid put on, I will never forget that. One that sticks in my head from around you, handful of years ago, Fonda's the 2 seed in sectionals, and they played Johnstown. This one, Anna Lee and the Vander Walker kid and Jaden Wilson, and Fonda's up, I want to say like 15 late, or definitely they're up double digits. I might have been 15, like 4 or 5 minutes left, and Johnstown just 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Just and like 6 threes in about the last 9 possessions of the game. Vandal Walker hits one to give him a 3-point win on the road. Like there's those certain things that kind of stick in my head. 28 for 29 from the free throw line in the fashion in which they did it, and what kind of game it was, and the final result of it. That's always going to stick in my head. A lot of it came from Kendall We Met and Olivia Landy. I thought they were trying to take some sort of advantage of Academy being a little physical and handsy on the defensive end, and I thought it backfired on them in the first half because they were trying too hard to draw contact. They were getting out of the flow of their offense to try and force stuff and just initiate contact, throw bodies into people, whatever, try to get to the free throw line. It was a college officiating crew on the game. One of them I have like high regard for as an official, and I have never seen the dude work a high school game before, ever. It's my 11th year doing this. I have never seen this dude at a high school game before. I've only seen him in college, and I have high regard for him as an official. And, they first that, like, Columbia was kind of going about it that way, and they didn't really get bailed out. And there was some frustration in the second quarter. And they came out of the locker room and let it come to them more. They still were in attack mode, but they let it come to how they were in attack mode. Instead of trying to force it, they kind of let it come to them. And it did, they did get Academy a little bit of foul trouble. They did get to the free throw line. They did convert every single time they got to the free throw line. And because they let it come to them, they started to get higher quality shots. They went through that long stretch where the shot quality was just low. And the second half, it wasn't. Which, it goes both ways. It showed that when they go through a stretch like that offensively, where you have that kind of lower shot quality or whatever, things aren't clicking the way that you would like them to, they were still, it was like a 1-point game, because they were able to keep Academy in the 20s in the first half. So they could grind it out on the defensive end. And then in the second half, what it showed was a level of resiliency might be a little bit too strong of a word, but you could see frustration on faces late in the second quarter. And instead of allowing that to tailspin on the road, it turned into just kind of hit the reset button and a better approach in the second half, which, is that something that they could have done a couple of years ago? I don't know. Maybe, it very well could have tailspin. That's kind of what it was when they played Academy last year. They little frustration, it tailspinned, and they kind of looked like they didn't want to be there. And this year, and I was on their home court, and then this year on the road, different story. And I know this is looking ahead to Amsterdam, and I saw them in Averill Park too. But this is the consistency that you're looking for. Like, this is the consistency that I've been the only thing that's been a hang up on this team or for this team for me. They've shown it. They've produced it in wins and losses, like the close loss to Averill Park at the beginning of the season. They're showing that in their approach, and they show in their approach that when things aren't going great, they can play through it. They can tread water and just work through it, play through it, get to the other side. So, this is that grown up, and this is if there is a year for them, this is their year. Seniors, a lot of senior lady, or a lot of seniors on this group that in primary positions. If there is a year, this is the year. So you would hope for it to look like this. And this is what we've been waiting for, or this is what the only thing that haven't seen yet from them. Seeing it.
And while on topic, we're just focusing on them because you mentioned the 3 games during the Christmas week um, events that were going on around here. They wound up beating Harrison and Our Lady of Lourdes. And you can chime in on this, but in scores that seemed pretty easy. And then the game they played Sunday morning against Baldwinsville, if you just pull up the final score from that game, which was bear with me, where is it? It was like a 20-point win. Yeah, the 50-36.
52-36.
Final score, you're like, okay, like it seemed like it was kind of competitive. It really wasn't competitive at all. The only reason there was a 16-point final score is because Columbia legitimately were playing like the entire bench for the whole fourth quarter and good bits towards the end of the third quarter. Like it was really an, I hate to say the word, it's not really, I might be exaggerating here. It was really kind of an unfair game the way that Columbia came out and was firing on all cylinders for the first 2.5 quarters before they just decided, all right, let's kind of start emptying our bench. But so that's the light on the Baldwinsville game. Harrison and OLL on Friday and Saturday. I mean, what has been? Is it possible that they just finally gotten to a point where there's two things? There's a maturity, a growth that's happened with this squad in that, they're finally mentally embracing the talent that's there and can now have this mentality of, even if we're down, we're never going to be out because of the talent we have. And then the second thing being, and I just wholly blanked on what it was going to be. I guess just not taking things for granted. Like, even when they are starting out well, like in the Baldwinsville game on Sunday, like there's no more letting the foot off the gas and then forgetting how to put it back on the gas in a way.
Yeah. Part of it's just the experience and maturity, for sure. I think that's probably the largest part of it, and having and embracing kind of the big three, so to speak. It's not going to be all three of their nights every night, but it's going to be someone's night, and I think all three, between Liv, Kendall, and Sarah, have really, they've been solid. It could be Liv's day one day, it could be Sarah's another. Kendall came on, with like the second half of the Harrison game and kind of carried that. I wasn't at the Lord's game, but carried it into the early going of Baldwinsville for sure. Like it's always going to be someone's game, but they've all three have been engaged and involved for every time that I've watched them. So kind of embracing that. I think both of those are solid points. It is the maturity. It is the experience. There is also kind of like a shark nature about them, where they smell blood in the water and they're attacking. And that's literally and figuratively, because they generate a lot off of their pressure, off of the zone pressure, and just active hands and the athleticism. And like the Harrison game, I'm even just skipping over Academy. The Harrison game, the first half was a pretty legitimate contrast of styles. Harrison, even though they're a guard heavy team, they want it, especially compared to Columbia, they want it slower, they want it more physical, they want kind of a grind, they want fewer possessions, where Columbia wants to kind of gas it out a little bit and get up and down, which you very much saw against Baldwinsville, because they were out in front the entire game. But first half was Harrison's way, and it was close, and it was like 23-20. And then Columbia forced the sort of pace that they wanted in the second half and ran away with it, literally. I wasn't at the Lords game. What I was told was, I've watched Lords twice, and I could see this happening. Lords is a good team. They struggle with athletic pressure. And what I was told was they just couldn't deal with the pressure. So that, not just who they beat, but how they beat the teams that they beat, I think was really impressive, because Lords, they may have graduated Simone Pellish, who was, their everything in a lot of ways. They're still pretty good. I mean, they gave Averill Park everything they could handle at AP the day before the Columbia game. I watched them beat the Kennedy and granted, Kennedy Catholic was not at full strength. They were missing their big kid. But I watched them beat the Kennedy Catholic team that just came up here and beat Niski and Albany. So, Lords isn't chopped liver. They struggle to score. They're trying to figure out how to get to that magic number of 50 against good teams, but they hold everybody to 40. And how Columbia kind of just ran them out, that's impressive in itself. And then you think about Baldwinsville, Baldwinsville's a team, to me, not trying to talk too much about Section 3, but Baldwinsville is a team that I feel like has performed a little bit beyond what my expectation was of them this year. They took, it was CNS's opener, and Baldwinsville played 3 games or something like that already. I get it. But they took CNS to overtime. CNS ended up winning, but they jumped on CNS early, and they ended up taking them to overtime. CNS is good. CNS came out here and beat Averill Park in overtime just a couple days after that. So they took CNS to overtime. The day before the Columbia game at Amsterdam, they played Shen, and Shen ended up really kind of, taking control of that game in the second half, and they won by, I think it was 68-57, or they won by 11. But Baldwinsville was up 8 in the third quarter of that game. Baldwinsville was up 8 on Shen, so we're not talking some crap team that Columbia played against. And they looked, Columbia and Beeville just looked like 2 different levels of basketball on the court. There's certain, Baldwinsville might walk away from, whether it has merit or not. There's certain games that when you lose, you walk away from thinking, well, if we did this and that, we could have won that game. That could have been ours, but we have to do, point A and point B better. And then there's certain ones that you're like, yeah, we couldn't. Yeah, no. Yeah, that just wasn't, that wasn't going to happen. That's what the Baldwinsville Columbia game was. Beeville's not walking away from that game. If we just, no. Columbia really put together they were up the number when they subbed out the starters and just played the bench the rest of the game. They were up 50-21. So, and final score was 52-36. So, yeah, I mean, you're seeing that with Columbia, and it's a combination of different things. Older, more developed athletes, more mature. There's everybody kind of, whether it's alpha or floor spacer or dirty work or defender or energy kid or whatever, everybody kind of knows their roles, and they're participating in them and kind of excelling in them. So yeah, I mean, this has been an impressive run for them, and all of the signs, going back, say, to the Academy game, when how the first half went compared to how the second half went, that's what consistency means to me. It's not be great every single second that you play. That's impossible. But stay in tune and steady with your approach. Fight through the bad shooting days, fight through the moments where you feel like, things aren't going your way, and don't ride the wave of momentum up to the crest and then down until you drown, sort of thing. Like, they've shown they've really kind of turned that corner. So it's been an impressive start to the season for them.
Now, turn our attention to the Amsterdam Holiday College Showcase, where I was Friday through Sunday last weekend. You were there Saturday and Sunday because Friday you were balancing between Averill Park and Holy Names. So Friday, I'll just touch on real quick. Number one, now I knew full well that UND, Utica Notre Dame, the defending Class A state champions out of Section 3, they lost a good amount of guard play. But still, to go out and see Greenwich go out and establish their pace of play and what they wanted to do as much as they did, and that was despite despite Ella, both Trinka sisters being decent contributors, and to see Greenwich handle things the way they did. That being my first exposure to Greenwich this year with the Wolf sisters added, even despite not having Olivia Davis because she was hurt for the weekend. I mean,
she's important. She's important.
Oh yeah, I agree. But to see them still take care of business the way they did, you could see why a lot of people have given so much praise to Greenwich coming into this season. I'm obviously not going to crown them because we still have, 2 full months of basketball to get through, including sectionals. But now it was one of those games where once you see it, you kind of get it, and that was the case for me that game against Utica Notre Dame.
Yeah, there's no. I know I wasn't there, but there was no game that I received more post-game texts and DMs about than that game. Whether it was people that were there or people that watched the stream or other kind of Class C folks around the state, that was the one that, because what I had said, for example, to people from like that Delhi, Unitigo, that sort of area when Greenwich played in the Delhi tournament at the beginning of the year, I've said to a few of them, like, yeah, the Greenwich team that's playing right now is not the team that you saw. I know it's only been 3 weeks. It's not the team that you saw. And I got a couple of those, like, I get it, texts after. And yeah, that was something I had a lot of conversations with Coach Snyder at Notre Dame, class guy. I know I've brought that up on here before, but class guy. But he kind of knew what he was getting into. Like, he was watching him on film and everything. He's like, I don't like this matchup for us. I know we have Shaker the next day and all that, but I don't like this matchup. And came to fruition.
Yep.
Came to fruition. And Notre Dame, like, to your point, Notre Dame is still good.
Yes.
The next day against Shaker, it never felt like they had a chance of winning that game, but they didn't get blown out. There were a couple times where it could have turned and, they could have rolled over and it could have ended up 20-something, but it never did. It was always in that 10, 12, 15 sort of range. And then they turned around a couple days ago at the thing at Utica at the Downtown Classic Nexus Center.
Yep.
And they just reminded the rest of Central New York, like, yeah, we might have lost those 2 games, but we're still Notre Dame, and they beat the snot out of Indian River.
Yep.
So, they're still good. And Greenwich was up like what 26 on them.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're good.
Just take a look at teams that play multiple games real quick there. Bethlehem. They basically showed both sides to them. I feel like Penfield maybe didn't know exactly, and this is me trying to put down Bethlehem winning that game, but I feel like maybe Penfield wasn't really prepared for the kind of player Caitlin Robbins was. And Robbins just showed up and balled out. She dropped, I think it was 27 in that game in the victory. And then the next day, the contrast being they came out and played a Holy Redeemer team that had a chance to sit and scout that game from the day before. Coach Jaworski came out, had basically a shadow double on Robbins the whole game. And I think it's just one of those things where if you know what to expect out of the skill level of Caitlin Robbins and you plot things out properly, they can be had. If you don't plan things out properly with the approach to Caitlin Robbins, you're going to be had. Is essentially the way that looked for Bethlehem between those two games with Penfield, the win they had on Friday, and then the loss they had to Holy Redeemer to start off the action on Saturday.
Caitlin is probably the least talked about legitimately good player in Section 2. I feel like people don't give that kid nearly as much credit as she deserves. She's committed to Bentley, which is a tremendous fit, one of the top Division II schools in the country. I think she made a great choice with that, and she kind of shut her recruitment down pretty early because, like, how, if I'm a Northeast 10 kid, this level player, like, how much better is my situation going to be than what Bentley is? So, smart in that regard too. But just she's one of the most, like, the physical tools, the measurables don't stick out. She's not 6'2". She does have long arms, but it's not like she has like a 6'7" wingspan or anything like that. She doesn't go up and clap the backboard or anything like that. But she's, it's like the Tim Duncan stuff. She's one of the most fundamentally sound players that I've covered, Section 2 and anywhere else in my time doing this. Tremendously fundamentally sound.
And very disciplined. Like, I can't think of, because, I've announced probably 3 years worth, including this year, like 3 years worth of games. I can't think back in my game log of covering Bethlehem. I can't think of a single game where she was ever undisciplined and in foul trouble to a point where it cost Bethlehem a game. Like, that's like to me, it's one thing to be skilled. It's another thing to be skilled and disciplined, and she's both at such a high level.
Yeah, she is. She's like the most trustworthy stock to put money in. You know what you're going to get out of her. Catches everything. Like you put something, you just put a pass somewhere in her window that she can get a hand on. She's catching it. Really high level finisher. Soft touch off the glass. Finishes different angles around the rim. Just she might not be a big post, but understands positioning, good footwork, always creates a wide base. Like, it's easy to get the kid the ball because she always creates a wide base. She gives guards, who most guards in this basketball world now are crappy post entry passers. As a guard, you really stick out because post play is never like, okay, we can look at men's basketball and say the true post is going away to a certain extent or whatever, because just throw the ball up in the air to the athletic 6'8" guy. Genetics, the physical, the chromosomes, the stuff that I didn't go to school for, right? It's never fully going to be that way in women's basketball. The post player is never going to die in women's hoop. Guards, but for whatever reason, fewer and fewer guards can make effective post-entry passes. So guards, you really do kind of separate yourself if you can effectively create passing angles and make a post-entry pass to a hand. Just want to throw that out there. But Caitlin Robbins makes that easy because she presents with a wide base. She gives you a large target to, for somebody it's not like a big player. She gives you a sizable target. She keeps people on her back. She keeps people sealed. She catches everything. She moves block to block well, just sliding off of dribble penetration. Just all this stuff. Like, it's not anything that, you're not putting this junk on the highlight film, but it helps teams. It makes her a high level player. It makes the guards look better. It helps teams win games. It gives your coach more job security and maybe gives them a raise. Like all these sorts of things. Like she's a very good player. But that's my little Caitlin spiel. Like, people know me, have known how high I've been on her for about the last 4 years.
Yeah. Same way.
But I wasn't there for the Penfield game. I was there for the Redeemer game. Redeemer's pretty good team, physical. That I like seeing Redeemer here. I would love to see more teams from that area in Pennsylvania come up and be in this. Selfishly, because it's less of a drive for me to watch them. But it's also, and I want, if you notice this too, and you chime in on it, it's a different kind of athlete.
Yeah.
Grittier, stronger, more physical. And just anybody that's at Amsterdam that saw that Redeemer team play, when I go to Northeast Pennsylvania, that's what I'm watching. Like that's I'll go see them in 6 weeks at their league semifinals, but that's like what every team is. Their teams are deeper. They care more about high school athletics. They have more kids that are interested in being part of a team. That are okay with being the 8th kid. They have more weight room kids. And I think when you see Holy Redeemer and Bethlehem against each other, that's the biggest thing that I notice is weight room. Like I see a bunch of weight room kids. And Bethlehem, granted, this is at points a younger Bethlehem team because they are mixing in sophomores and freshmen a little bit more. But there was a clear physical difference, and it was something that Bethlehem didn't really like. You could see that they were unhappy with it. They were looking at the officials, looking for stuff. And did the officials call a lot? No, they didn't. But at the same time, like, that was the physicality was something that they just couldn't. They couldn't deal with that. But that's what every team in that area is like. That Luzerne County and that Lackawanna County. That's all that kind of athlete. And most of the good ones, they have that kind of depth. Like Hazelton, who they'll see in the league semifinals, has 18 kids on their roster, and the 16th kid looks like that.
I'll give you a Section 2 comparison. Averill Park.
Yeah.
Because Averill Park is... They're not afraid to be physical. They're chippy. They nothing is ever easy on them when they're on the defensive end. You're never going to get an easy bucket. If you do, it's going to be the rare transition bucket that they do allow. And that's kind of Albany Academy too, as well. Like the Academy kids, they're a lot more multi-sport faceted, but they're kids that all embrace their role. They're just as hard-nosed on defense as well. And yeah, there's a couple Section 2 teams that represent that, but I would agree with you that it's a lot more across the board down there than it is. There's more finesse to the game up here than there is down there.
Yeah, I mean, and there's skill down there too, but it's just the depth of athlete is different
Right.
down there. Like, I'm not, and I don't mean the quality of athlete. I don't mean the quality of the top of the line athlete. It's just the depth. You know, a lot of those teams I go and see are like, you know, it's a lot of redeemers down there.
Yeah.
As far as the sheer depth. So, but yeah, that was my take. Was I didn't see the Caitlin 27-point day. And that's okay. I don't need Caitlin to play well in front of me to make me a believer.
Right.
I've been a believer since she was 15. You know, I saw them, and your point on Redeemer compared to AP is a good one, because that was, you know, that's a good, you know, that's a good sort of test for them, because that's a sort of physicality, it's a sort of grind that Bethlehem's got to deal with.
Yep.
When they play with AP, and it was a back-to-back, and it was their first game. It was 10 in the morning, or whatever, you know, all that stuff. But I know they didn't love it. You know, it was kind of easy to see they didn't love it with their reactions. So, it's better to get that feel on the 28th at 10 in the morning.
Yeah, agreed.
They did. I will give them credit in this. It could have. Bethlehem only lost by 8. It could have went really poorly for them. I walked in late in the first quarter. They hadn't scored yet.
Right, and I feel like part of the
thing was battled back.
Yeah, and I feel like part of the thing was too that there was, I think there was one or two players that tried to match, for lack of a better phrase, with chippiness, and they overreacted in a way, and it got them into foul trouble, and that didn't help either. So, yeah, it was one of those things where they couldn't find the fine balance.
Don't ever try to beat somebody at the game they do.
Right. Yeah, basically.
Make it your game.
Yeah.
You try to beat somebody at the game they do, it ain't gonna work out for you.
Then jumping into a couple of teams that actually competed 3 times over the course of the weekend. I'll start first with Shaker, a team that was going through that whole 3-day stretch without Malia Jackson. She was nursing a minor injury. She'll be good to go though starting this weekend, from everything I've heard from Malia as well as Coach Shipley. But they went through it 3-0. They faced again that Chippy Holy Redeemer team, only a 3-point deficit that Friday game. Shaker then closed out the Saturday slate against Utica Notre Dame with a win by 14 there. And then on Sunday, Webster Schrader, a game that was, really until about midway through the fourth quarter felt like a coin flip. And then once I feel like because at one point Maya Perales, now again, I didn't see what happened, but I don't know if she took like an accidental shot to the throat or whatever it was, on a box out or whatever it was. But I feel like once they got the visual of Perales like struggling to catch her breath on the sideline and needing her inhaler and stuff, and having to sit out for about a minute or so, I almost felt like it kind of deflated Schrader in a way. And Shaker eventually went on a run to get themselves, I think it was like a 15-point victory in the end. So Shaker goes 3 for 3. All 3 of them with their share of, scratching and clawing and because they had spent a month or so adjusting to life with Malia Jackson, and then I was like, okay, we have no Malia this weekend. All right, we gotta get back to, what we do: shooting threes, getting out in transition, and It was just one of those things where they did enough to walk away with 3 wins, and now they can, look ahead to getting back into Section 2 play.
Yeah, it was nice to see them be able to adjust to life without Malia because they've been working to adjusting to life with her.
Exactly.
They needed everybody. It's another one going back to the team effort thing. It was a team effort. Everybody kind of carried their weight in that, but they needed, at least the last couple days when I watched, they got great efforts from Peyton Hoblock and Jayla Jeter. They got tremendous efforts from both of them, and they needed it.
Especially that Sunday game against Schrader. Jayla Jeter was unreal. Unbelievable game.
Jayla was tremendous. Peyton in the Notre Dame game, she guarded Ella Trinkus. Like this was, she took the assignment of the star. She guarded Ella Trinkus in that game, and Ella ended up having, she might look back and Ella's kind of been working through some injury stuff this month. She's had some back issues, but so it hasn't been like that 35 point, 23 rebound, crazy sort of December for her. But she might look back at that game and say that was her worst of the year when all is said and done. But she guarded Ella that game. The next day, the Lannies ended up picking up on Bria Watkins for the second, third, and fourth quarters. Peyton started the game on her, which when I saw that, I was like, oh, shoot. She's going to guard Bria too. Just kind of, drawing the assignment of the stars out of the gate. How engaged she was at both ends of the court. Like, she had like 15 points against Notre Dame and I think 14 against Schrader. And she had more impact in those games than a lot of kids that I've seen that have scored 30 in games. Yeah, how they got it. Her passing ability out of the low post, out of the mid post, her passing ability to lead the fast break, like grab a defensive rebound, sling it ahead. Just is an underrated, on time, on target passer. Again, taking the assignments on the defensive end. Jayla playing against high level teams, high level opponents. The headliner for her over the weekend is her banging 4 fourth quarter threes against Schrader to win, to win going away, right? But, and I get why that's the headliner for her, but she handled the ball against quality opponents all weekend long, righted the ship, kept turnovers down, got the ball where it needed to be, and she is somebody that works well with a big. So she works well with Malia. You didn't really have to, like, the whole adjustment thing with them, with Shaker and Malia joining them. That wasn't really a thing with Jayla. She's fine. She works well with bigs. So you take that out, it kind of flips back around to what kind of offense they're running and their personnel. She got the ball where it needed to be, and she got up and guarded everybody. I thought that she was instrumental against Notre Dame and Schrader. I thought that she was instrumental in the ball pressure that she could put on. Teams never got I wasn't there for the Redeemer game, but the other two, these offenses were never comfortable, and I think they held both maybe to 43. It was pretty much a very similar score, something like that, but in that low mid 40s. But nobody, even Schrader, who's very good, no one ever looked comfortable in their offense. And that, a lot of that has to do with, we'll look at who's guarding the stars, like how physical they were able to be, or how they were with Bria and grinding and making her work every possession. And she still worked her way to 24 because she's a tremendous player, but it was a difficult 24.
Mm-hmm.
But So a lot of credit goes to the Lannies and Peyton with that, but the head of the dragon is who's guarding the player that initiates their offense. And they never look comfortable, like even getting into offense. So Peyton was tremendous. Jayla was tremendous. They're a very talented team. If they're hitting their stride, they're starting to hit their stride now, then look out.
And I feel like Jayla is going to be kind of looking in the mirror on Friday night, but we'll touch on that a little bit later with the matchup she's probably going to draw. But again, we'll get to that in a minute. The other team that played 3 games in 3 days in Amsterdam also came away a successful 3-for-3, and that was Shenandoah. Friday night, they were able to take care of business by 4. That was a real, sloppy, grinded out kind of game for Shen over Whitman Hanson. Whitman, I mean, you want to talk about a team that came out and stylistically was very much like Holy Redeemer in that you don't get an inch of space. Like, you earn every inch of that 84 feet on the court against Whitman Hanson. And that was, I thought, a very good challenge for Shen in that regard. And Shen was able to successfully get by it by 4. Then they took care of Baldwinsville 68-57 in a game where could have been closer as a final. But Shen was able to hold up there. And then Sunday, Shen came out and just ran away from Canandaigua 66-42. All in all, your thoughts on what you saw from Shen last weekend?
Yeah, I mean it's annual tradition for them. Go to Amsterdam, win every game. It wasn't quite they've had performances that they put 96 on that Redeemer team a few years ago when the Herders were around. 96 or 98, so I think it was 96-54. But they've had some really dominant performances against good teams there. It wasn't quite that, which to be expected, but they were able to play 3 teams. Although I wasn't at the Whitman Hanson game, I did watch Whitman Hanson when they played Schrader. They played 3 games against 3 teams that all have their own unique styles. Whitman Hanson, very physical, developed athletes, grinded out. Don't want to say that they're not skilled. It's not that. They are. They have skilled players, but they're trying to wear on you in the way, as you said, that Redeemer does, and to an extent, the way that Shaker does. Shaker wants to try and wear on you. I think that's what they did against Schrader. They're trying to break him down, wear on him, and then it took about 28 minutes, and they were able to break through. I think Whitman Hanson tries to do that same thing. So Shen played against a team that plays like that, and they played against a Baldwinsville team that is more finesse, and they lean much more heavily on the shot making and creativity of their guards. And they do, the bigs get involved, but it's off of pick and roll action. It's off of the creativity of their guards. And then they play a Canandaigua team that Shen and CA are not mirror images of each other, but they're similar in their team desires and concepts and kind of benchmark of half-court execution. So it was 3 teams, 3 unique styles, and they come out with 3 wins. They won a game that was a slog, thug it out, under 50 sort of game. They won a game that was up in, Baldwinsville finished with 57, but it was a game that was really played more in like the 60s to 70s sort of range. So you win different, you play teams different styles. You have to play in games that kind of had different feels about them, and you win all of them. So I think that's from the team standpoint of getting better as a team, and you want that with your non-league games. I think you always have talked about that with various coaches in the past. We spoke about that like with Dwaynesburg's group when they were coming up, and those sorts of things where it was, if you can see quality opponents that have different sorts of styles that you may bump into down the road, I think it's a worthwhile experience. So you get 3 wins, 3 kind of different kinds of opponents, and I think that's a meaningful trip for them. And it was also, this just comes with the territory of Shem this year, but it was different members of that starting 5 kind of stepping up, different time frames. Was it the Canandaigua game where it was the front court really ate? They went through Kate Milham a lot.
Yeah.
That was the one where Kate scored in the mid-20s. Gianna was Gianna, lots of energy and had a higher scoring game, maybe by her standards, up close to 20. They had other moments where it went through Maya Parker. So they got more bench minutes. You need, this sort of thing could maybe be their biggest challenge, where we've talked about their limited depth, and you play 3 games in 3 days, you got to touch that bench. You can't just play 5 kids for 96 minutes over 3 days. And he found bench minutes, and they held their weight.
Yeah, and to that credit, I'd say Olivia Littlejohn, Jordan Gurney, even to a degree Grace Parsegian. I think those 3 definitely established themselves. If they hadn't already established themselves, they definitely did it. I feel like in those Amsterdam games, especially Jordan Gurney, because I felt like
Jordan fan.
Jordan, there was no drop off. I felt like with Jordan, Jordan wasn't, and it wasn't like she was put in there to be an offensive boost. I feel like she was just, when she does go in there, yeah, she can score if she wants to. It's more just to keep the ship level and above board, where you're not going to notice a drop off in the motion of how things are being done in that offense. And Parsegian, right, and Parsegian can crash the boards. Olivia can, provide some minutes to give a breather to Maya Parker running the point. So, yeah, I feel like I feel like Coach Murphy has figured out the bodies he can go to provide a couple minutes of relief at points. And I as much as we question it, maybe preseason or the first week or 2 of the season, I think Coach Murphy has definitely figured it out, and now has an idea of, at the very least, probably an 8-girl rotation he can work with and be successful with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll just reiterate that I am a big Jordan Gurney fan. And she might not score a lot for them. She might go through this entire season with her final, the banquet, when you get your stat sheet for the year, she might not score more than like 30 or 40 points this year, but for all I know, but she gives them, I would say that she gives them maybe something that they don't have as much of in their starting 5, which is interesting in the sense that she can be a half-court creator. She's a very good passer. So, and she showed it a handful of times in those couple games that I watched, just her ability when they're playing out of whatever half-court set action, just turn the corner, get 2 feet in the paint, and just draw enough eyes on you to make the next pass, and she laces people with some high level passes, whether it's a post dump down. There was one pass that she made to a shooter in the opposite corner that was not an easy pass to make, kind of across her body, and hit the kid right in the pocket. Where that's a, there's probably two kids on that court that can make that pass, and she gives them kind of an interesting element when she comes in the game in that sense. So yeah, they're figuring it out.
And then finally, I just want to close out by bringing up the hosts Amsterdam. On one side of it, just Eric Doomward doing another fantastic job of putting this tournament together. Like I mentioned before we did the intros for that last game on Sunday night, this is a tournament that 15 years ago had a handful of teams, and now all of a sudden he's bringing in roughly 24 teams between some of the finest teams you can find around here to Section 3, Section 5, Section 6, Northeast PA. He's bringing in teams from, whether it be Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and
Connecticut in the past.
And obviously, Seminole San Francois is now become a regular again with David Lavassoure now a head coach up there in Quebec. So, Eric does a great job there. But as far as the actual basketball for the Rams, came off a split of that South Glens Falls swing in their schedule on the road, lost at Glens Falls, won the game at SGF, and then came into their home tournament, took care of business in the opener on Friday afternoon against Saugerties. Both teams struggled. Both teams were sloppy, but Amsterdam, they just in the end made less mistakes and were more comfortable and got the win by 10 there. And then a real just bar fight, essentially, with Kingston to close out the tournament that Amsterdam eventually won by 13, 61-48. And this is a team that is basically in the middle of AA where, they're kind of in that category of like Bethlehem, Queensbury, where, they're not upper echelon per se. I'd even throw Boston Spa in there, even though Boston Spa record-wise is better. It's kind of, they're like the second tier essentially below the Columbia Averill Park Catholic Central line, I feel. And obviously you could throw Niskuna in there as well, as like the head of that B tier in AA. But I feel like Amsterdam, they obviously have shooters, they obviously have guards that can pass the ball. I just feel like they're either a fully developed Kamari Allen away, or I know they have a decent sized girl on JV right now. I feel like they're just a post presence away. And in that regard, I'd say a year or two away from becoming a real contender potentially in AA, especially with, Columbia. They have that, they'll lose Wee Man Landy after this year. Averill Park, that's going to be a program that's going to be interesting once Ahern and Verardi and Wolleber graduate after this year. Boston Spa is losing a couple of players. Catholic Central is going to lose Navi. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in AA going forward. But specifically to Amsterdam, they're just maybe one or two players in development away from, if they get to where they could be potentially, you could see them in the swing of things in AA down the road.
Yeah, and I think it will kind of lean a bit on the development of a post presence. And I say that more so less about the positional balance, more because their guards are so freaking small.
Yep.
Tirado,
no offense to her, Ellie Tirado is
5'6",
big combo guard. Right, she's a combo who can play post, but she's also, like you said, 5'6" probably.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you put her against, for example, the two games they'll play every year against Broadham and Perth, at least this year, the Perrys are 6 foot. That that's a problem, So it's
Yeah,
probably
it's not so much that's my thing. Like, it's not so much the development of a post presence if your personnel is that of like a colony, where physically, measurably speaking, you're talking guards outside of Aaliyah that are 5'9",
right.
right? Your Hoffman, Tremarky, so on. Like, I'm not looking at that team. Like, you know what they need? A 5. Just they can. They're versatile defensively. They can give you some different looks. Their their guards can play, can defend forwards, like, Liv Hoffman having to guard Amelia So, the probably highest level prospect at the Amsterdam Showcase from SSF. But with Amsterdam, you know, Ellie's what, 5'6", Mia's 5'4", Perez and Arujo are less. They're in that. I'm not trying to make fun of them, but I always say, like, if you get below a certain height, you can just list the kid at that height, because nobody really knows. If you're below like 5'5", you can just say 5'5", and all the coaches will be like, I don't think that kid's 5'5", but they don't really know how, like, what the difference between 4'11" and 5'2" and 5. They're in that range, right? So when your guards are so, if you had like the kind of bigger guard presences, I wouldn't really be looking like you need a post, but with your guards being so small, I think that's what it is. I think it is the long-term development of the young big that could really kind of balance them out. But yeah, this is a young team, and I kind of have to keep that in mind watching them. It's a JV aged unit in all reality. Like, Mia's a freshman, Ellie's a sophomore. Perez is a sophomore. Rujo's in 8th grade.
Kamari Allen's a freshman.
So your starting lineup is a JVH starting lineup.
Yeah.
So, kind of keep that in mind. I actually thought about that in Kingston. Like, imagine nothing. It's just like, imagine them playing any JV team in Section 2. But which I know is not a fair comparison, because, at this point, if you have a good freshman, definitely sophomore, but you have a good high schooler, I mean, they're playing up. But like, this is a young group that Coach Dumler is going to have around for an extended period of time. He puts the work in. I know that a lot of the kids put the work in. The amount of times that they're in the gym, and in the gym for not just for like the playing, getting up and down 5-on-5 aspect of it, but shooting reps and all that sort of stuff. I know they all put the work in. So, this is it's an exciting group that, as they get older and as the natural physical development and maturity comes along, I look at them and think, this could be an entertaining group. And although they are very small, and they'll have to make up for that in certain ways, like on the glass, and create a lot of turnovers, because they're not going to do particularly well on the glass, sort of thing. But this could develop into a pretty exciting group, with a group of kids that can put the ball on the deck, that will space the floor, make you guard them. Mia as quick release shooter that all she needs is to see one fall, and she's hot for the rest of the game, basically. So yeah, I mean, it's a fun group. They're young. I think they're invested, and probably the development of the big away from kind of balancing the ship. And I'm thinking about the foothills now as we talk about this, and it's kind of, well, who's next in the foothills? And probably them.
Yeah, I mean, because look at the foothills right now. I mean, you have Amsterdam, Queensbury. Once Canavan graduates, I don't know what's up after that, really.
Yeah, and Telesco went prep, so that was going to be their next one.
SGF, Mohan, BP.
SGF's rebuilding.
BP's going to be rebuilding once they have Molly Russum and the two Perry girls graduate this year.
They'll have she's not on varsity right now. They'll have Tucker's daughter coming up.
Right.
Addison Gifford, 8th grader.
Yep.
But so they'll probably try to build around her for
and years. Then you're looking at Glens Falls, Scotia, Gloversville, Hudson.
Glens Falls will have a couple pieces coming back.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I look at that Amsterdam group and think that's probably the next one.
Yeah.
The foothills.
And things will even out, relatively speaking, I feel like, once the 25 class gets out in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Pretty late weekend coming up, but there are a few games of note worth mentioning. One that popped out to me and is going to fly under the radar compared to the one game of note I really wanted to tackle. And the reason it's of note to me is because I still don't know what to make of either team as far as where they stand in their respective classes. I don't know what to make of LaSalle in the Bs. I don't know what to make of Guilderland. Obviously, Shen, Shaker, Colony, Albany. Even though Albany, I would say, is down compared to the last few years, that's still your lead 4 in AAA. But Guilderland has been competitive enough where they get you thinking. And to have that matchup against a LaSalle team that, for all I know, is on the younger side of things, it's an intriguing, especially at LaSalle, it's an intriguing matchup to me on certain levels.
Yeah. Yeah, it's intrigue. Where it would intrigue me more personally is just in the sense that LaSalle is a team that I just don't know as much about. You know, I know Kate Galuli, but I don't know as much about that group. It's a team that I should go watch at some point. Class B we've spoke about this probably ad nauseum, but B is just throw it all in a pot and figure it out. You know,
right.
It's very open. You go into the season thinking part of it, it depends on how teams develop throughout the year, in-season development. But then as the season goes on and it continues to look open, then it's just like, all right, who's the best version of themselves on any given day? I believe, if I remember, I don't remember the exact number, but I know LaSalle played Mechanicville over the break, and it was a single-digit game, and it was one that LaSalle led at half. I want to say Mechanicville won by 9, but they were down 6 at the break. They either won by 9 and they were down 6 at the break, or they won by 6 but they were down 9 at the break. But single digit game with Mechanicville. I know they had a single digit game with Niski at the beginning of the season. Galuli's put up some big numbers. They're, they might find their way into being in that mix in 6 weeks or so when we really get to that time. But could be also a high scoring match. Like Galuli's put up some big numbers. Brooke Lily's put up some gaudy numbers at times in the early going of the season. So feels like a game that could tilt a little bit more towards bet the over.
The interesting thing about that Mechanicville game, though, by the way, first off, you were right in the sense Mechanicville won by 9. It was listed as a home game for LaSalle, and then for some reason, I don't know if it was day of or day before, they moved the game to the old Mechanicville gym. Okay. I don't remember the exact reasoning why that happened. But I just remember, I think it was the morning of the game, they announced it had been moved to the old Mechanicville gym, and I never got follow up why. I should have followed up with Mike Mitchell, the principal over at Mechanicville. I just never did, but yeah, that was a 9-point loss to Mechanicville that day. So that's that. The two headline games to me are both involve a specific school. And it's not just because my co-host is coaching the team, but Albany Academy, they got a strong non-conference game tomorrow night at Shaker. I think it's a 6:30 start time, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me. I'll try to pull that up quick in my calendar. 6:30 tip-off at Shaker. And then they turn right around on Sunday as part of a girls-boys doubleheader at Siena College. The girls will be taking on Holy Names in what is the home game of the conference schedule for Academy. They'll play at Holy Names later in the year. But their home game will be at Siena. That's a 1 p.m. tip-off, which will then be followed by the Boys Academy taking on CBA at 3 at Siena. But obviously to focus in on the girls' games, obviously the big question will be, assuming Malia does play, which is everything I've been hearing about this game tomorrow night. A, what percentage is she at? And B, with her on the floor, who takes on the Malia assignment and how, just how much attention is she given within the defensive assignments of Albany Academy? I feel like that's because you have the obvious, and some might disagree with me, some might agree with me. I think you're split down the middle between Jayla Jeter and Liana Williams. And this is not me trying to blow smoke up anybody's butt. I really think they're mirror images of each other in a way. For Liana and Jayla. And then you get to the Lonnie twins and we'll say Cheeto and Leonard. And then you get Hoblock v. Morgan VN, essentially. Because I'm going to go on a limb and say probably Haldeman draws the Malia matchup. So that's my guess. That's my assumption how the matchups play out. What do you see with this one with Academy and Shaker?
It's a contrast of styles and how Academy plays the whole, if Malia plays, how Academy plays Malia probably will be dictated by what Shaker's lineup is to a certain extent. Because if Shaker's got their full starting 5, you play them one way. If they have to go to their bench, which they usually, Coach Shipley, she's not necessarily digging super deep in it, but she is finding bench minutes. How you guard a lineup that has 4 of the starters and Jace Cavill on the court is different than how you guard a lineup with 4 starters and Roots on the court. I think, if you're academy, there's certain things that you're just personnel, physically speaking, you're going to give some stuff up. There's no two ways about it. And who I'm sure whoever's in the game between, or I would assume whoever's in the game between Thornton and Ostavar draws the Malia if they go, if they're going too big. But the key, if with Academy's personnel against Shaker, is you're telling your forwards, whether it's Thornton, Ostavar, or it not forwards, but your Gito and your Alex and your Morgan, run, keep running, run, just go. Right? Doesn't necessarily mean that we're trying to go breakneck and score in transition every time, but freaking run, sprint, transit. You're trying to make Shaker's forwards run as often and with as much urgency as you possibly can. Yes, you're trying to wear you're trying to wear a bigger lineup of Malia and Peyton. You are trying to wear them down over the course of 32 minutes, but what you're trying to do with that too is get them in a little foul trouble. Right. Try and make it so they're in the lineup for 5-6 minutes straight, and you get one of these stretches where there isn't that much it's called, and it's there's not that many stoppages of play, and we're all kind of sucking wind. Try to make them suck wind a little bit more, make them a half step slower, and get a hip check, or those sorts of things. But you're also Shaker could, I've seen Shaker do both. They've matched up. I've seen him play that extended zone. Keep turnovers down against it, because you want to try to play that way against it, but Shaker also can run. Shaker will run off of turnovers. If they're not creating turnovers, then a lot of times they're playing in the half court, because Jayla is also successful as a half court player. But if they can create turnovers and they're trying to get out and run in transition, so you got to keep turnovers down. If you want to try to do that, you can't let them get anything off of a transition. You want that to be your way of winning. You don't want them to have success, in their own ways, playing that sort of style. It's just Shaker's got size that they can punish Academy with, and Academy has high level floor spacing that they can draw, whether Shaker matches up or whether they play that sort of extended 3-2, they can draw players, they can draw defenders out. They can make forwards have to move on an island, whether that is just sliding step for step, matching up, or whether that's against a 3-2, getting a baseline drive where you make one of their forwards have to commit to the drive, or play or allow the baseline drive and try to block a shot while preventing a dump down, or whatever it may be. But there's not so much a contrast of styles as much as it is there's a level of, you have your similar personnel, but then you have some greatly varying contrasting personnel, and how does each side deal with the other while trying to take advantage of the other. But it's a game that people should go to.
Absolutely.
It's a Friday. And if you're listening, if you're nearly 2 hours deep into this installment of 84 Feet, then I'm probably not speaking to you because you're probably interested in all this stuff. But it is a Friday night that is the latest Friday night of the season. Period. The latest Friday night of the season. It's a headlining game. People should be at this game. Two of the top teams in Section 2 with high-level talent on both sides of the ball. People should be at this game. This game should be covered by more people than me. All of these sorts of things. So I should this should be an opportunity for me to see good basketball and see a lot of people that I know. So if you're not doing anything on Friday night, Shaker's got a nice new gym.
I'll let you jump into that pool. I'm gonna keep my mouth shut about that. But I mean, let this be my sign off on it. If I wasn't already committed to announcing, because I took on Johnstown boys. Yeah, if I didn't take on Johnstown Boys and Girls High School hoops this year for announcing, I would be there myself. So, as if you need another person to sign off on this game other than Jeff, it's me. So, go be there, damn it. Then the other half of that Academy weekend, that Sunday afternoon against Holy Names at Siena. They'll be playing on 94 feet instead of 84 feet, which is always interesting, especially when it's the first weekend of January and your sea legs have gotten so used to 84, you're not sure about 94 potentially. But still, very good matchup. Obviously, a matchup that people are potentially expecting to see down the road in the first weekend of March. But we get to see its first installment now, and then the second installment later down the road at Holy Names. How do you feel about that match? Because I feel like I feel like it's kind of the same thing actually as Friday night. Because you have another young big in Maggie Vollmer who's growing into her own, matched up against Academy. The difference being, I feel like while Holy Names is still a very, very good team, it's not as intense a matchup per se. Particularly in the point guard position necessarily. Jaylen's very good, but I'd still say Jaylen's maybe a step ahead. But I'll let you touch into that a little bit as far as that matchup's concerned.
It's a tough test for Holy Names. There's no two ways about it. Player for player, that's a difficult test. But they get to see where they're at right now. Just kind of a mid-season little. They've had success with the schedule they've had to this point. Now they get to see where they're at now, and then in a few weeks they get another test with them, and then maybe in another few weeks that the kind of the culminating activity between the two. It will be a tough test for Holy Name. I think Academy's biggest concern, and this is nothing against Holy Names, it's just what the situation is. I look at that game and think Academy's biggest concern is going to be against itself. You got to make sure that you don't have any shaker hangover, because it's only a couple days, and I don't subscribe to the whole like tired, oh no, back-to-back games or 2 games in like any of that sort of stuff. These kids play AAU. They play 4 games in a weekend. They know what it is. But 32 minutes against Shaker is not 32 minutes. That feels like a lot more than 32 minutes of basketball, because it's just a consistent grind every possession. Those are ice bath games. So you get that game, and it is I know it's a non-leaguer, but it's a headlining game. I'm not on social media as much as people probably think that I am, with how much my business is around post the social media posting and everything. And people that don't know me don't look at me and say, "Hey, it's Jeff." They say, "Hey, it's Takeover." But I see the stuff on Instagram. I see they've been posting about this stuff for like 2 days now. So, it might be a non-leaguer, but there's some buzz around the Academy Shaker game. So you have to avoid that hangover. There can't be any sort of lackadaisical layover and just, anything off of the physical toll of that game. So, I think that's going to be the biggest thing for Academy is don't get caught up in that malaise, the weekend malaise after the big Friday night game. It is they're Holy Names personnel is a different team. It's different than Shaker, but it is similar in the sense that they work inside out. I look at Holy Names kind of as like your Dwight Howard, Orlando Magic sort of team, where you've got your one big and a lot of floor spacers and shooters around them, and they're at their best when they're working inside out. They have to make sure that they stay committed to playing inside out. Doesn't necessarily mean make sure Maggie gets a touch every single possession, but they have some dribble drive players. Like Gianna is a little bit more of from an offensive standpoint, she's a little bit more of like a dribble drive guard. Morgan Brewer can space the floor and shoot the three, but she is more of like a paint touch sort of kid. They have to be committed to that and play off of that, play through that. Academy's got to keep them out of the paint. And they'll give up a little bit, and it's actually that's where it's similar with Academy. They will give up a little bit with Maggie. It's just personnel. But now you're playing 94 instead of 84, which accentuates the run. Get up and down. Make Emily Thornton and Kira Ostavar and run. Run every possession. That's what something that your key point in that sort of matchup. But yeah, it is. It's a tough test for Holy Names, but it's not like it's it's not a dud of a game by any stretch. But I think just with the setup of this game, where they play each other in a few weeks, I won't be saying Academy's fighting. Academy's biggest thing is kind of like fighting against itself, or what the tendencies could be. But just how it is with this one, with playing Shaker on Friday, and what that's probably win, lose, whatever the physical effect of that sort of game, and then turning around and playing just kind of like a Sunday matinee at a neutral site. Give that the same sort of focus and attention and urgency as you would any big game, because that's one of the top couple colonials that them and Catholic High, like it's one of the top couple colonials you'll play.
Yeah. All right, man. That wraps it up on my side. Anything else real quick you wanted to bring up before we take this home?
Only other one that I would look at this weekend is kind of an interesting one. I won't be there because I haven't fully decided my Saturday plans, because part of it's going to depend on the weather with the lake effect snow west of us. But you saw Binghamton High at the Amsterdam showcase. They're actually making the trip up 88 to play Albany High on Saturday, which I feel like is going to be halfway in. After watching Binghamton, I knew what, personnel-wise, I knew what they were. But when they beat Canandaigua, they did, they impressed me compared to what my expectation was, as far as there was a level of steadiness that they usually don't have that I was impressed with. beating Canandaigua, like that's a quality win. They have guard play with Shania Balo. They've one of my favorite players of that entire event. It was a big baby, Hayden Gibson. She got herself in a little bit of foul trouble, but when she was in the game, she made tremendous impact. Just physical posts. I call her the collector. It's not like she's a big time athlete or anything, but it feels like she grabs every single rebound. She catches everything. She finishes everything. She had I heard this one from secondhand from Coach Doomler, but I know that she got hurt in that Canandaigua game, late first quarter, second foul, and I guess I was telling Doomler how much I like. This is my favorite kid. I don't care about all your high level prospects. Hayden Gibson's my go to kid, and he went and talked with Carla, right, the trainer. So I guess her shoulder popped out late in the first quarter of that game. And they went back in the hallway, and she just popped it back in herself. It was like, I'm good. Just kind of like, she's like, and then just threw her arm down. Was like, all right, I'm good. Came back in and was good to go. Give me that toughness. But I actually am a little interested in that game with Binghamton coming up to Albany High on Saturday. I'm either going to be dealing with the some of that lake snow in Herkimer, where there's 4 games going on at the college that day. Utica board officials versus Cancer, with actually some decent games. Or I'll be going down to Kingston for the Mahal versus OCIAA that day, where they've got 5. But that should be an interesting one, also this weekend. But yeah, that would be all that I would add. This was a fun holiday break week. It was good to see everyone in Amsterdam and Naval Park and Holy Names. It was good to get out to Elmira to finish out the year like I often do for the Josh Palmer. Cardinal O'Hara's really come around since their opening season first couple games in Colony. They're really they're showing some, showing a little bit more depth. Looking forward to getting back to our regular sort of weekly schedule as we hit kind of the dog days of the season. January's kind of a big month in the sense of it separates, that's where you see the separation of who are your more highly competitive teams. Because if, I always say this kind of in the terms of my website subscribers, which one more time, go ahead, EmpireStateTakeover.com, cranking stuff out constantly. But if, my website subscribers, sometimes it drops off in January because the teams that are good are all in. By the time we get to like Martin Luther King, they're all in. And they probably have already subscribed to my stuff. And the ones that aren't that good don't give a damn anymore. They're thinking about softball season. They're like, the season a few weeks away. Can't wait. So this is, kind of the dog days where I see who's kind of really about it, what players bring that same approach to the 13th and 14th games of the season as they did the excitement of the first couple games. So new year, let's have some fun.
All right, Jeff Mlinar, Empire State Takeover. Another week, another edition of the pod. We'll catch you again next week. How about it?
Can't wait.